This is Capital Games. I am the Wiz. E3 has always been a special time, specifically for me, and I bet Zero too. When we were younger and everything, I remember in the '90s reading game magazines and hearing about everything that was announced in E3, and then when E3 became viewable from the public with their keynote speeches and their press conferences. It felt like a really special time, especially when you're into video games, because you get to see all the new games that came out around that time. And I've got a lot of memories to think about around E3 time. The reveal of Halo 2, when, that's interesting in itself, because not only remember the announcement, I remember watching a G4 at the time and it cutting to commercial and hearing an Adam Slusser getting pissed when it was going on. That was funny. I remember a lot of the great Nintendo press conferences and the cringy ones as well. Who can forget the Wii Music press conference and how terrible that was? I've got so many different memories involving E3 in that, and I think a lot of people do too, especially older gamers like me. I'm in 40 right now. I think a lot of people have a lot of fond memories with E3, and wanting the desire to go to E3 and check everything out was a big dream for a lot of people, to want to experience that, the hustle and bustle, and to go into that thing and play new games that are coming out. Like, it was really exciting, and it was not only exciting, but it also was a bellwether for what the next year was going to be for the next 12 months. And a lot of pontification, a lot of talk, chatter, and everything about what the big games are going to be. Is this game doing well right now? Is that going to be delayed? E3 was vitally important for the gaming industry, not only business-wise, but just socially as well. It really became a vitally important thing in the industry. Until about 2012, 2013, I think would be around the time. I might be getting the dates wrong, but then there was a period of time where companies were starting to want to shy away from ESA and E3, and they would start doing their own thing. But they wouldn't turn around and say, well, we're not going to E3, we're going to have our own thing at another location that is near E3. So we're in the vicinity of E3, but we're not going to be on the show floor. I know EA did that. Very famously, Sony ended up doing that after a certain point. I think after they announced Last of Us 2. And it's been slowly showing a bunch of other companies trying to get out. Nintendo was another one that didn't do press conferences anymore, but they still chose to be at E3 in the physical sense in this one. So before the pandemic was really starting to show that E3 was having a lot of issues getting people to come back and be part of the event. Either they had issues with the dues, or they had issues with what ESA was doing with E3 and what its identity was. A lot of people had a ton of issues, and then the pandemic just threw a real monkey wrench into things, and we haven't had an E3 since. Now, Summer Games Fest has taken up the mantle to a certain extent by providing a space where game publishers can go ahead and announce things in the same package as an E3 press conference, but it isn't quite the same. But it's still something that people enjoy watching, and I think it's still vitally important to have around this time, where gamers are conditioned to know that at this time in June, a whole mess of announcements are going to happen. So we need to pay attention and stay tuned so we can all be part of the social discussion about what's going on in the game industry and what was announced. Before I get into the news of what happened this week, I want to just put out my feelings towards E3 in general. I've talked about this before when Zero was here. I've said it online and on Twitter, and I'll just reiterate. I think an E3 week, or some kind of E3 thing, is vitally important for the gaming industry. You need to have a week where people celebrate what's coming up in the future when it comes to video games. Other industries do this. The music industry. I know movies had Show West for a while. I think it's called something different now. CES is part of the tech landscape that shows different things that are coming up in the pipeline. For a vital industry that is entertainment-based, it is important to get people excited about the future and what's coming up. And I know a lot of people are saying, and I believe this too, that a lot of companies want to shy away from E3 and just do their own thing. But there is an importance to having a grouping set up so there are large amounts of announcements coming so it gets mainstream attention. Now, what is mainstream attention? I know that's a little ambiguous right now. I get that's a little weird and you may not think it's that important. But it is important because a lot of people don't really get to know what new is coming out until it's either released or there is a huge marketing blitz. When that happens, a lot of people don't trust advertisements anymore, so that's a problem too in this. So if it gets mainstream coverage in certain outlets like, say, the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CNN, NBC, things like that, that is vitally important. Not only the respectability of the gaming, but for the game itself that garnered that kind of special attention. It really helps those games boost its credibility to a point where that is incredibly important. And I think part of that is having E3. Now, some of you might say, well, we have the Game Awards now that not only does the awards, but it's also the future. And you're right to a certain extent, but the Game Awards also acts as a buffer between E3s and those E3 weeks, because the entire industry is used to having a 6-month period where they announce the things that are coming in 6 months, and then the next 6 months, and the next 6 months. I don't think it would be a good idea to cut that off and get rid of E3 entirely, and then say, oh, we'll just do the Game Awards, and it'll be a 12-month thing. There's not enough space in the Game Awards to do that, so it's really hard to say that the Game Awards can just take over E3. The other thing, too, is the E3 thing that they have is still workable. I mean, look at Gamescom. Gamescom still works, and people still like Gamescom and going to Gamescom as well in Europe. So it's not like the E3 trade structure is what's wrong here. It's just because Gamescom still works, and people like Gamescom. I think people just don't like the ESA and what they're doing with E3. Now, why am I saying this? So, it was announced this week that, first it was announced that Ubisoft, after committing to being at E3, will no longer be at the show floor. They're going to do a separate thing outside of E3, in the vicinity, it was announced. Which I thought was kind of surprising, because they were steadfast to say that they really weren't steadfast. They waited a week to actually say something. But they did say something saying they support the ESA and E3 and they were going to be there. So for them to then pull out and say they're going to be outside of E3 was pretty weird. And then it was announced as well that both Sega and Tencent have confirmed that they also will not be showing up at E3. I don't know if they're going to have separate streams or presentations. I would imagine probably Sega will. It is starting to look like a lot of these publishers and a lot of these development houses are shying away from E3. And it's kind of, and we don't know why exactly, but I think E3 as it is now, as a physical trade show, is gonna die down and come to an end. Because let's also be honest here. A lot of these game companies would use E3 as a way to pitch retailers on why they should be purchasing their games in bulk. Right now, game companies are trying to get away from doing physical media. They'll still want retail space for their consoles, but they're finding it less and less important to have physical media in those game systems. So they're putting less value in retail space at this point. They still want the systems out there, because there's no other better way to actually get that into people's hands other than to go to Walmart, go to GameStop, and get the system. On the other hand, they don't really value the retail space as much. They still will give lip service to it and say, oh, we do value our retail partners and whatever. But as we see more and more, they're coming up with special editions, and they're also coming up with games that are exclusive to digital that people are still buying. Or they're having goodies that if you buy it digitally that you'll get, and if you don't decide to buy it with the disc. So there is a concerted effort to get rid of the need to use retail space on this one. And let's also be honest here, shipping discs and shipping and buying space at a store, there's a price to it. And if you can make it cheaper, they'll do it. There's that, and that E3 just doesn't have that purpose anymore. And the other thing that they used to do is to do business with other development houses and other, I'd say, third-party houses to conduct business. That's also changing. There always is going to be GDC, but there's also other ways that they can come across and do business as well that they really don't talk about. But there are other avenues other than E3 to do that. And then let's also talk about the fact that, and I hate to say it, well, not really, because I've been saying this till I'm blue in the face for the past year. Games journalists and games journalism and these websites like IGN and GameSpot have lost really the ability for the usefulness to these companies. These companies have no problem doing ad blitzes and promoting their streams to then show it off to a bunch of people that are subscribed to their YouTube channel and subscribed to their Twitter channel. If they're a fan of, let's say, Far Cry or any other game, they have no problem doing that, and they don't need the IGNs and GameSpots to do that. In fact, it's the IGN and GameSpots who need them, because what they end up doing is they piggyback on their stream and then comment on it either during or after it, like any other YouTuber right now. At this point, the entire relationship with presenting their games and giving it coverage is entirely on the development houses and on the publishers. In that end, when it comes to getting the word out, they don't necessarily need it. Now, some of you might be hearing me saying this and go, so then that's proof right there that you don't need E3. That's not exactly true, because in this, the people that these publishing houses get are the really staunch and really diehard gamer bros and gamer fans that are into this stuff and follow the industry. If they were to give that up on E3, they're missing out on a core base that would get more mainstream attention. Because let's face it here, I know a lot of you will point out, and it's true, gaming makes more money per year than any other entertainment industry. Bearing in mind that it's much more expensive to play games, but they make more money. You can put in the biggest money-making movie of the year last year, which was Top Gun Maverick. Okay, I think it made like $2 billion. And there's 5 games that have beaten that in sales. It's true. It's entirely true. But when it comes to mainstream respectability, gaming still has that big problem where there's a big stigma behind it. That not only is it just for kids, but even if you wanted to get into it and you've never tried it before, it's hard because you have to deal with the controller, and that's odd to manage. Or if I'm on PC, it's kind of weird to play a game with a keyboard and mouse. That seems kind of odd. That seems kind of intimidating. As much as a lot of people like to say, "Oh, we're mainstream, we're incredibly popular," you're really not. No one really. And again, I know people are going to be like, oh, but the Game Awards got X amount of streams and the sales. No, but you don't understand. You don't have the cultural zeitgeist that movies, TV shows, books, sports has, okay? Everyone will talk about, with no problem, sports, movies, TV shows. But to this day still, if you talk about a game, unless it's Call of Duty, you're kind of looked at weird if you're an adult. And that hasn't changed. And the only way that can change is to get more mainstream exposure and to get more mainstream coverage and for it to be shown on more mainstream outlets that it is an important and vital entertainment medium in this country. And if you don't have that, and people are still, and that's another thing with gamers, they like to gatekeep. If you still gatekeep that as, only true gamers, blah, 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 like this, you're not going to gain the respectability that they want. And as a business, the gaming industry still needs it in that. They still need that respectability, because I know a lot of you will point out, X amount of sales, and all the money it's making, and this and that, blah, blah, blah. More people watch more movies and TV shows throughout the year than play games. It's true. They will watch without a problem. Okay? Think about this. And we all know people who do this. They will binge watch a show for 10 hours straight, talk about it with no shame, have no problem, have no issue talking about it, and no one will give them a bat and eyelash about it. But if you talk about you played Call of Duty for 3 hours last night, they'll look at you like a loser. And you know that's what happens. Or if you say, I played Hogwarts Legacy all weekend. I beat it in 20 hours. It's great. All you did was sit around and play video games? What a fucking loser. That stigma is still there. And as long as that stigma is still there, it's not going to gain the mainstream respectability that movies and TV shows have. And until then, you're going to continue to have that, and the way to beat that and to show it as a respectable business, not a respectable business, but a respectable entertainment medium that is a truly artistic medium, even though I think it is, but a lot of people don't, to show mainstream respectability, and that is vitally important. And getting rid of E3 is a way of kneecapping that to a certain extent. I have been a critic of the gaming industry for a long time, and I'll say it here and I'll say it now. The gaming industry has a respectability problem. It really does. A mainstream respectability problem. If you're hardcore into games, you understand the medium, that's great. But I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about Joe Blow, who, if you were to say that video games are art, they'll look at you like you have 3 fucking heads. Now, they might do the same thing with TV or movie shows, but all you'd have to do is cite examples. Say, for example, I think TV shows are art. How do you think it's art? Breaking Bad, The Sopranos. Oh, yeah, good point. Or movies. How do you think movies are? Schindler's List, Citizen Kane, The Godfather. Oh, yeah, good point. You say video games, they're going to say, what, Fortnite? What, Minecraft? Those are art? Are you kidding me? And what other options do you have? And you can mention something like Gone Home, but then you would have to go into great detail to explain why, and that never works. Okay? There is the only zeitgeist games, things that people find are popular, and I hate to say this, but the only zeitgeist games that are incredibly popular when it comes to video games are sports games like Madden, FIFA, MLB, Minecraft, or Fortnite. That's it. That's all there is. Maybe Mario. Maybe Sonic, okay? Maybe those two. But that's it, okay? And until you get that respectability, you're going to need something like E3 to celebrate all this, to show these odd curiosities and new games that are coming out that deserve the attention. But if you take that away, if you take it all away, you're just going to leave the industry in a suspended animation where it's just going to be looked at, I hate to say it, but for mainstream people, or for common people who aren't gamers, they're toys. That's all they look at. They're toys. That's how they look at them. You can make a claim that movies are art, and they may argue, but you'll have something in your back pocket to say, well, what about this? Oh, yeah, good point. You don't have that with games. You can claim, well, what about God of War? It takes 30 hours to beat God of War, okay? It takes 30 hours. It takes 2 hours to watch a movie. And on top of playing God of War for 30 hours, you need to use the controller. Okay, and then what are you showing in commercials about that? The violent fights, angry muscular man, and all these weird these things that are in common mainstream movies. So all they'll say is, okay, so you just made an action movie and made it playable. Okay, whatever. Are you gonna tell me Bad Boys is art now? Are you gonna tell me that Fast and the Furious is art? Come on, really? Come on, guys. be serious now. Gaming has a respectability problem, and E3 is a way to bridge that gap. And if you get rid of it, like a lot of people are asking that maybe we should do that, I think you're going to harm the industry more in the long run in this aspect. But yeah, that's my opinion on it. I think the holiday of E3, the week where everyone announces a whole bunch of things in a set period of time, I think needs to stay. Maybe the E3 physical, the physical thing, the convention needs to go. Maybe that's what needs to go. And I don't think I'd mind that, really. When it comes to, I think the holiday and the announcements and the hype and the mainstream attention, the mainstream press that get involved, that's invaluable, and you have that right now. And if you decide to get rid of it, you're going to miss it. You're not going to get it back. So I would say if you want to stay away from ESA and E3 and just have a week where everyone in the industry decides we're going to make big announcements at this week in June, great, do that. But to then turn around and say, well, I don't want to spend the money, or I don't want to compete with other people, that just sounds silly. You're going to harm yourself in the end when it comes to mainstream respectability. And I know these companies really don't care because they only think of this as a business, and they only think it in terms of dollars. When it comes to culture, when it comes to being a part of the culture, this is really the best way that video games can stay in the culture in this case. And video games are only in the culture when it comes to controversy, or with, hey, isn't this neat that video games make money? Like, that's it. That's all you get. You never hear on mainstream press about how brilliant God of War is, or how amazing Elden Ring is. You never hear it. All you hear about is, should we be allowing people to play games with such realistic violence? Or something along the lines of, what is your 10-year-old talking to when playing Fortnite? That's all the coverage mainstream that we get, that the gaming industry gets. And it's not going to change unless we become more mainstream and we get more mainstream coverage. Not become more mainstream, I shouldn't say that. But when we get more mainstream coverage, that's the only way it's going to change. And if you get rid of E3, it's going to be a net loss in so many ways that you guys aren't, I think a lot of people are not seeing. What do you think? Do you think that the E3 holiday should go away? Do you agree with me? Do you have other thoughts that you might have on this? Leave a comment below on Twitter, Facebook, or on the YouTube channel. Or if you have a thought, you can email us at zerowizcast@gmail.com. Until then, we're going to have the weekly dividend on Friday. I should be good to go at that point. I'm not sure what I'm playing right now. I got a bunch of games I would like to try out that I haven't gotten a chance to play. So we'll see what happens with that when it comes to the weekly dividend, but I'll figure something out. So weekly dividend is Friday. We did a movie review on the Movie Club Tuesday of Wong Kar-wai's Chungking Express. Thursday, me and Kim are doing a review of A Hard Day's Night, so that should be interesting. So if you are interested in those, check those things out. Until then, this is Capital Games. I am the Wiz. Talk to you next time. Bye.